In a world of amusement parks, few places are as legendary as Cedar Point. But even among its many roller coasters, some stories stand out. Stories of ambition, innovation, and ultimately loss. This is the tale of Disaster Transport, the indoor roller coaster that once promised to take riders on a futuristic adventure through space. From its origins as a bobsled run on the shores of Lake Erie, to its transformation into a sci-fi thrill ride, Disaster Transport was unlike anything Cedar Point had ever offered. But as the park's skyline grew and coaster technology evolved, this unique ride faded into the background. Join us as we explore the rise, fall, and lasting legacy of Cedar Point's lost indoor roller coaster.
Next time you get bored with life on Earth, leave. Disaster Transport, new this summer at Cedar Point.
Cedar Point. Known as America's roller coaster, this historic amusement park has stood the test of time. Since its humble beginnings in 1870 as a public bathing beach, it has evolved into one of the premier destinations for thrill seekers, home to some of the most record-breaking and innovative roller coasters in the world. The park's coaster legacy began as early as 1892, with the introduction of Switchback Railway, a wooden ride that reached top speeds of 10 miles per hour. As Cedar Point's popularity increased, so did the addition of amusement attractions. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, the number of roller coasters grew, utilising the technology of the day, paired with more thrilling layouts. By the 1970s, the park began to embrace the era of the steel roller coaster. This was originally accomplished on a small scale, or with off-the-shelf travelling models, but in 1976, Cedar Point unveiled Corkscrew. Becoming the first in the world to invert riders 3 times, the new roller coaster proudly showed what steel technology could achieve. In 1979, the park reached even higher, exploring hybrid technology with the creation of Gemini. Gemini was a huge success, and drew large crowds to a ride that was marketed as the world's tallest, fastest and steepest roller coaster. Looking to repeat this success, park management was searching for a novel roller coaster technology that would have the same impact for their next large-scale installation. Resurrecting an older concept, Intamin would introduce the bobsled coaster in 1984. Named for the resemblance to the winter sport, and taking inspiration from the older wooden flying turns rides, bobsled coasters have no fixed track, with trains travelling freely through a U-shaped trough. The first of these new type of rides opened as Screaming Delta Demon at Opryland, USA, with more constructed the same year. It will be a bobsled coaster that will be installed at Cedar Point for 1985. A site for the attraction was chosen on the edge of the beach. Wildcat and Matterhorn would be relocated, creating a large plot for the Point's next roller coaster, and construction would begin. Maximising space in the packed park, sections of the new ride would be located above the sand itself. Leaning into the winter sports theme, the coaster will be named Avalanche Run. Its blue and white colour scheme suggesting icy chicanes, and the station building featuring a European aesthetic. But the theming stopped there. The ride was simply built on the existing concrete of the site, with the location of its former tenant still visible when viewed from above. When it premiered, Avalanche Run was marketed as the only ride in the Midwest to simulate a real bobsled run, with the park even claiming, "It's a thrill you won't find at Disneyland or Disney World." In its debut year, Avalanche Run opened to large crowds and long lines. The latter was most likely due to the attraction's limited capacity. Manufacturer Intamin claimed a theoretical hourly throughput of 1,800 riders per hour, but the reality would be much lower. Those wanting to ride would join the switchback queue before entering the station building. Inside, they would climb into one of the bobsled cars. Originally, these sleds featured an inline configuration, with up to 2 people sharing a seat, while in later years these would be updated to hold 10 passengers, sitting in pairs side by side. The updated trains were added in an effort to increase capacity. Once dispatched, it would be straight up the lift hill, cars progressing slowly and eventually reaching the maximum height of 63 feet. Then it was off on a freewheeling adventure. Sleds were free to take their own path, weaving along straights and soaring high into the bank curves. The 1,900 feet of track was designed to accentuate this, with tight curves and helixes that took advantage of the unique nature of the ride. Despite a strong reception, Operational issues would manifest themselves as the season progressed. The picturesque lakeside location was part of the problem. Sand from the adjacent beach would accumulate in the trough. This would necessitate a closure until it could be swept away. A decidedly precarious job, given the height of the structure and the banking of the U-shaped channel. The coaster, while large and imposing, became known for its milder ride experience. One that looked positively tame when compared to 1989 installation Magnum XL 200. The year after the opening of Avalanche Run, a new leader had arrived at Cedar Point. Dick Kinzel had begun his career in the park's food service division, working his way up to manage Valley Fair before returning to Sandusky as CEO. In the late 1980s, Kinzel was a bright new leader, offering a fresh perspective. He had limitless ambition for Cedar Point, as well as knowing and understanding the industry. He had taken a personal interest in what Disney had done with the likes of Space Mountain and Star Tours, hoping to emulate this at the Ohio park. Creating such an attraction without the budget of Disney would prove a challenge. However, it seemed the conversion of an existing ride could provide a cost-effective solution, as well as solving another issue that plagued the park's bobsled coaster. Closing on October 1st, 1989, it was subsequently announced that Avalanche Run would undergo a renovation, becoming Disaster Transport. This new ride was billed to be a futuristic space adventure where passengers could undertake a mission to deliver a cargo of goods to Earth. The transformation would see Avalanche Run enclosed in a massive show building, solving the sand problem as well as allowing control of the environment within. Developed and designed by iTech Productions, the proposed building would be filled with 150 props, including 20 animated devices and 2 life-size robots. Lasers, projections, mists and audio-visual recordings would bring scenes to life as passengers travelled through space. Work on the $3.3 million project would begin immediately, ready to debut the next season. In 1990, visitors would see a change to the skyline of Cedar Point. Where Avalanche Run once sat, now stood a number of large buildings. Connected by tubes and held up by steel supports, the tan structure towered over the midway and adjacent beach. A large 12E was painted on the side of the show building, giving little away about what was contained inside. Entering the air-conditioned interior, visitors would be introduced to the elaborate storyline. You are entering a futuristic depot belonging to Dispatch Master Transport, an interstellar shipping company. Becoming one of the first public passengers who will be bound for a receiving station in Alaska. The extensive indoor queue would introduce guests to this narrative as they progress through the multiple rooms of the company's warehouse. Atmospheric lighting, video screens and sound effects immerse guests who will become part of the intergalactic story. In one room, a robotic foreman supervised an automated rocket repair, while in the control room, Android Dave would occasionally malfunction, saying Disaster Transport instead of Dispatch Master Transport. Reaching a set of stairs, visitors would ascend into the launch area. Lit in blacklight, your futuristic transport lay ahead. The vessel, a repurposed Avalanche Run bobsled, giving guests a clue that the adventure they were about to undertake was not entirely new. Seated in groups of 10 like in its predecessor, would-be riders climbed aboard and were secured by lap bars. Dispatched into the enclosed lift hill, explorers began their ascent. Their journey skyward accompanied by red and blue chaser lights. In an odd twist, these lights advanced away into the distance, which when combined with the speed of the lift, made progress feel unfeasibly slow. Taking up more than half the ride time, cars would eventually crest the peak. A star field would come into view, and riders would begin their descent as they achieved orbit. Space pirates were detected in the vicinity, as rocket ships raced through the darkness of outer space, passing through a large helix and causing your craft to bank heavily. A wrecked spaceship would be seen ahead, and riders would pass through block breaks before diving under and to the left of the debris. The ride then entered a large space, planets came into view, and rockets circled upwards around a hovering alien satellite. The darkness ensued again, briefly punctuated by stars, before passengers raced through a rocky otherworldly landscape. Rockets were then slowed by the brakes surrounded by blacklit control panels of the transport company. One last bit of storytelling would greet riders. A sign declaring, "Welcome to Alaska," with exterior planting featuring white gravel, emulating snow. Disaster Transport was unlike anything Cedar Point had offered before. An indoor roller coaster was a novelty in a park known for its towering steel rides and sweeping views of Lake Erie. For a time, it found its place within Cedar Point's lineup. However, disaster transport was also a polarising experience. While some appreciated the unique dark ride style aesthetic, others felt it lacked the intensity or the on-ride theming to make it truly memorable. What Cedar Point had tried to do with the ride was admirable, attempting to turn a problematic coaster into a modern story-led experience. The lines were sometimes long, but that was likely due to the low capacity of the ride or the icy air conditioning, rather than the popularity of disaster transport itself. The roller coaster would also suffer an accident in its opening year. On June 7th, a large foam asteroid prop would fall into the ride trough. This would be struck by an oncoming vehicle, resulting in injury and 3 of the passengers being treated at nearby hospitals. This was also the beginning of the roller coaster wars, and parks were racing to outdo one another with taller, faster and more elaborate rides. While embracing the bigger is better mentality, little thought was given to theming and immersion. Even during its second season, some of disaster transport's numerous effects would be broken, with seemingly little attempt at repairs made. As the new millennium approached, more and more effects were missing, and by the early 2000s, the ride was looking decidedly worn. Cobwebs filled the building, props were removed, and lighting was turned off. The roof of the show building would leak, meaning the attraction would close in the rain, as water would accumulate in the ride channel. By 2008, the entrance had been rerouted, with riders ushered through a side door to join the last part of the queue. The remaining space was repurposed and used to house a maze as part of Cedar Point's Hallow Weekends. The presumed failure of disaster transport shaped attraction installations across the chain for a number of years. Supposedly burned by its reception, as well as the increased cost of maintaining an effect-driven ride, led the company to operate with the mindset that theming would never again trump thrills. The impact of this philosophy can still be seen today. During the Coaster Mania fan event in 2012, it was announced that Disaster Transport and Space Spiral would both be removed to make way for a new ride development. Disaster Transport would close the same month, the last rides taking place with the lights on as part of a charity auction. Demolition would begin within a week, and was quickly completed by the end of August. The adjacent Space Spiral was spectacularly toppled the following month, ready for removal. Rising from the dust of disaster transport would be GateKeeper. Opening in 2013, this B&M wing coaster would span the site once occupied by the indoor attraction. Extending over a redesigned entrance, GateKeeper can still be ridden to this day. Inside the new roller coaster's gift shop, guests may spot someone familiar. Dave the control room robot was preserved and displayed. Other artefacts and props from disaster transport have been saved by the park and used during special events, with a section of trough and coaster cars donated to the National Roller Coaster Museum. While disaster transport may have faded into theme park history, it is an attraction fondly remembered by many. For a generation of guests, it was a unique blend of sci-fi storytelling and coaster thrills, a ride that, while flawed, represented a bold attempt to do something different. As the park continues to grow, one thing is certain: Cedar Point will always find new ways to transport us, whether it's through space, time, or simply into the next thrill.